Lamar's numbers against the Steelers, 1-4, only 19 points a game, Brew. 11 turnovers, that's a big one.
It's ridiculous.
So is it more important for Lamar to win or play well, regardless of the outcome?
Well, first I'll say this. The news that he's never faced them at home with a crowd makes me feel a little better. I mean, really.
And the fact that he's into it, too.
Yeah, and he recognized it. But this is a good question because he hasn't played well individually. It's not just the L's. But obviously you want both, but they got to win. Even if he plays poorly, they got to win. Because, first of all, the division, AFC North, like they could, Pittsburgh clinches the division if they win. If Baltimore wins,
they're alive.
They're alive. And the Steelers play Kansas City and Cincinnati.
Yep.
If Lamar plays great and they lose because Justin Tucker's missing field, which is why they lost the last game, or a big part of it, or the defense gets run over, you're not going to feel any better if you're the Ravens. I don't think. I don't think you will. I mean, it would be nice. Oh, Lamar, okay, he got over the hump. But still, these are things that have plagued you, and you won't. I don't think you'll feel much better. Yeah, that'll be a silver lining, but I don't think you'll feel great. And the third thing is, all of these losses, they've lost 8 of their last 9. Lamar's 1-4 against them, but they're 1-8 against them over the last 5 years or so. All of them have been close. All of them within a touchdown, 7 points or less. So if they beat you again and it's close, it just reinforces like, what do we have to do to beat this team? And now the noise feels like Marlon Humphrey said he didn't even know before last game that they were on this losing streak against the Steelers. So the noise is getting louder and louder and louder. If you lose again, it's just going to be that much more louder. So I think they got to win there.
I will give the specific answer, but the real answer is both. Both must happen. And must happen if for the Ravens to be a contender. Because listen, I know this doesn't resonate with Brew, and Wilds oddly thinks it's unfair, but Dusty, the graphic. Because you have Lamar against the other multi-time MVP that's still a star, his hated sworn rival, or just the team in the
minus
division.
The Bengals. Where are the Bengals?
Hold on, Brew, I'm begging you. Nobody thinks Ravens-Bengals is the same as Ravens-Steelers.
But it's still a rivalry.
Yes, just not your main
Joe
rival.
Burrow?
Yes, yeah. I didn't. That doesn't say Lamar against all his rivals. It's against your prime individual rival, your prime team rival, and I guess we could say games in mid to late January, or as I call them, the playoffs. So that would be a problem. But here's why I disagree with you, Brew. For you,
which one is more important?
Right, so that's Lamar play well. That's why I'm saying
even if they lose.
Well, let's play this out. What is more concerning on Monday? Or let me flip it. What gives you more optimism come Monday? If Lamar absolutely balls out and they lose a heartbreaker like how they beat Cincinnati, or if Lamar's absolute unreal struggles against this team continue, but they win because Russell Wilson makes a few mistakes, and because whether you agree with the totality of that graphic or not, take the KC part out of it. You agree the Steelers, this is a very big game.
Yes.
You agree with that. Yeah. And you agree that the playoff thing is real and it's a legitimate indictment on Lamar.
The playoffs, we just disrolled.
All right. So this is like you said, if they lose, the division is wrapped up for Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So this is as close to a playoff-ish game as you can get in the regular season. And if Lamar, even in that context, struggles massively, that to me is more concerning than if the team loses but he plays great.
Okay. I'm really not going to entertain this whole idea that Lamar Jackson can't handle the moments, he can't handle big games, because that's what Nick constantly implies, and that's what he constantly wants to do. I've already picked apart that so many different times, and I've always blamed the Ravens franchise as a whole for those failures and not on Lamar Jackson individually. He has some responsibility, of course, but I don't just light on this. There's this idea that he essentially can't handle it. That again, he has to play the Chiefs or he has to play the Steelers, and he's just like, oh, I don't know how to play football anymore. And like that idea always drives me insane because I just don't think it's true at all. So we got that out of the way. But in terms of what's more important for Lamar, like we got to look at this from multiple different angles, because if Lamar plays great, for instance, let's say it's a similar game to that of the Rams and the Bills, where Josh Allen plays amazing, everyone loses their mind how good he plays, but they still lost. That gave a lot of belief to that franchise, to the Bills themselves, to the fans. You know, you can sense that even though they lost that game, there was still a level of intensity that people were like, whoa, like they are stepping up. This offense is coming into their own. And then again, they followed it up with another massive game offensively for against the Lions as well. And so that was a lot of momentum building. For the Ravens itself, we've already seen that onslaught of points. We've seen all the amazing games that Lamar has been able to pull out of. And again, if you're questioning how great you believe Lamar is, then sure, maybe you need to see him play. I don't look at those numbers and look at the lack of success that he's had as Steelers and think that there's some special thing that they've figured out. Because if there was really something for them to truly figure out, then every single team would do it. That's why we always. It's like when you expose something or someone, that means it becomes essentially like an undeniable truth, and you'll always be able to do it. If you expose that someone doesn't know how to read, well, then they will not just magically the next day know how to read. Right? It will take time and years for them to like learn how to read. So if he was ever exposed, well, then every single team would do it. Then he would like that would be his new average. It would truly be his new average. And it's obviously not. It's not his norm. If there is truly something to him not being able to handle the moment, I think we would see it in more moments than we do. We would see it against the Browns and the Bengals. Like we would see it against the Bills. We would see it in other big moments that we do not see it in. So I think this is more of a statistical illusion rather than a statistical reality. That's just the way I see it. Until it continues, then I will change my mind. But in terms of what's more important, the Ravens have already struggled too much throughout this season, where if Lamar balls out, but they lose, you're going to have the feeling of like, like you're not going to have that same level of confidence. I would almost feel better to see them win an ugly game. And usually I'm on the opposite of this. Usually I'm the one that says play great. But I would have ended up losing to the Lions, but types of circumstances thing, then you just need the Ravens to be able to win, whether Lamar balls out or not. And in some way, you can make the argument that it would be better to see Lamar road. Put it this way, if the Ravens end up winning this game, but Lamar kind of just plays like average, I'm not using that. Not the way my mind. In that game, it signals to, this game against the Steelers with Lamar not playing great, it signals to me, look, the Steelers have what it takes to be able to do this. The Ravens have what it takes to be able to do this. I do have more of a belief now that they can beat, say, the Bills or the Chiefs or whoever they're facing in the playoffs at the time, especially if we get a good game out of Lamar. So it's a tricky situation, not to mention we just saw what the Eagles did to the Steelers. And we saw that was, the team. It was obvious. They definitely were the better team, the more organized, the more resilient, right? Their offense flowed better, their defense flowed better. Even though the score could have been closer, even if the Eagles ended up losing that game, you would have said, that would have been the definition of the Eagles beat themselves then. It wasn't because the Eagles weren't good enough. And so now coming off of that game, you're like, okay, are the Ravens a Super Bowl contender? Yes or no? If they're a Super Bowl contender and a top Super Bowl contender at that, then you come away with this win. I don't care about it being a divisional game. I don't care about the history of Mike Tomlin versus Lamar. I don't care about any of that. Because again, if we're saying, well, that's a real thing, well, then it's a real thing for the Chiefs and Lamar then. And then at that point, you better hope that the Chiefs lose in the first or second round before the Ravens get there, because otherwise there's no chance that you win in a Super Bowl then. So you have to kind of figure out, what do you think is accurate or what is the reality of the situation before you figure out then what's more important. If you think Lamar has a legitimate problem against the Steelers and against high value games, then sure, you really want to see him eventually break that barrier. If you don't think that that's a problem, then you need to see the Ravens be able to win regardless of how amazing Lamar Jackson plays. You need to see them be able to win these games that they're supposed to win, because if they can't win the games that they're supposed to win, then we're too close to the end of the season at this point too. It would have been more concerning, that Rams game with the Bills. That's why it's kind of a great example as well. If that was like the final 2 games of the season, then you would be like, oh man, is this what's going to happen in the playoffs? Like, so much of it is also timing. So yeah, the Ravens still also need to signal to themselves, we can win. Because they're still in that process of convincing themselves, how great are they? The players know it. They know it. They feel it. They know their record. They know they're not even winning the division. So they know that they got to be better, that they got to play better, that they got to win, that they got to prove it to themselves. And at that point, that becomes more important than anything Lamar does. Because like I said, I'm still on the side where I think that some of these stats like that with Lamar Jackson and the Steelers and whatnot is more misleading than not. If he could not ball out against the Cincinnati Bengals and just really, crumbled in that moment, then I would say that was a problem. And again, you don't think it was a high pressure moment against the Texans? He played great against Texans in the playoffs last year. So I really disagree with some of these assessments of Lamar. And that's why at the end of the day, I'm looking at this more through the lens of the Baltimore Ravens and not so much with Lamar Jackson. But I will say this. I'll end on this note. I didn't need the belief of Jalen Hurts of being able to throw against the Steelers. There was all that drama going into that game. I didn't need to see that for it to be confirmed that he was capable of doing it. But I can still acknowledge that it does help build momentum and even confidence within the team. Even if the team knows it and the coaching staff knows it, it still is seeing is believing. And sometimes you still do need that refresher. That's why people go to church every Sunday and read the Bible, even though they've read it and have heard those things a million times. Because you still need a refresher. You still need to be reminded, oh, right, I'm not supposed to steal. Oh, right, I'm supposed to be good to my neighbor. It's easy to forget, even though it's obviously a fundamental truth of life. You still need that constant reminder. Otherwise, you'd go to church like once or wherever you go to for your, spiritual, whatever. You would just know it all once, read the book once, and you'd be like, boom, I got it. And we know that's obviously not true. And so it would help the team even more. That's why the best scenario is obviously have Lamar ball out and the Ravens win. Then you're going to feel great. But, to kind of handcuff us to this question, which is kind of fun to do in sports because, it kind of makes sometimes a more interesting conceptual conversation to kind of unpack when we kind of back ourselves in a corner and say, okay, what do you do in this situation? Because otherwise it would be repetitive and we would just be like, well, of course I want to see Lamar ball out and the Ravens win. And it's like, well, yeah, that's obvious. How much more can we discuss that though then? So, Still interesting nonetheless, though. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Baltimore Ravens? Do you think it's more important for Lamar to win or play well? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be a part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.